Thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name's Dave Medori. I'm the Chief Procurement Officer at Evoke, and I'm going to talk about how our journey is to bringing net zero to life. Okay, so a brief introduction into us. So we're a FTSE 250 sport betting and gambling company, better known for our individual brands, being William Hill, probably the main one, 888 and Mr. Green. So we're mainly a .com gambling business, but we do have a large site footprint globally. But we've got over 1,300 sites, so that lends itself into us being quite a big emitter of carbon. So the last point I want to put in here, why procurement? So I'm not a sustainability manager or anything like that, but why did procurement get the net zero responsibility in Evoke? Well, that was probably when I started 6 years ago, where our CEO and CFO at the time asked, could I do the environmental reporting for the group? I then decided, well, they also said, would it be good character building? I said, do I need to do it? And they said, well, if you don't, you'll probably get your P45. So that was the start of my journey and procurement having responsibility. So early days, and I'll do this in a little bit of a story. So we have been doing this for quite a while, but I didn't recognise it as net zero per se back in 2018 to 21. So these are some of the high level actions that we did. One was to source renewable electricity, implementing AMR meters in our non-half hourly sites. So we had about 1,000 sites at the time that were non-half hourly, so we just didn't have the data to do anything with emission reduction activities. So that was a big activity for us. Then it was all about utilising that data to reduce down our emissions, which we've done quite successfully, and then writing a lot of business cases to implement energy efficiency activities, such as modernising our HVAC estate systems and putting in LED lighting, for example. And then the final point there, again, terminology was, we know it now, but I didn't know then, scope 3 activity, trying to reduce our corporate travel. So we had a lot of corporate travel, and we just drove the adoption of virtual meetings. And this was way before the corona pandemic. So that was successful. And in a year, we reduced corporate travel down by about half. So carrying on, we've got a lot of data centers in the group, purely because being a gambling operator, you need to hold licenses to hold in certain countries. So we need to have data centers effectively in most countries that we operate. So some of the big areas that we've concentrated on is virtualization, basically having less servers, working on having renewable power as well in those particular sites, where we modernize the servers, having higher server ambient temperatures, up to 30 degrees. So that's gone up a lot over the years. And then using software, which we use today, and we're actually using AI now to better maintain and improve the peak efficiency of all of our servers in our data centers. So that's a big area, and we've probably got about 20 data centers, so a lot. So in the middle part of our journey, this was a bit where the environment and net zero got derailed. We had a lot of M&A activity in the group. And when I say M&A activity, so our core focus at the time was around cost savings and cost reduction in the group. We bought a company called Mr. Green. William Hill was then bought by a company called Caesars, the big hotel and casino group in the States. They then sold us. We were then acquired by 888. And while all that was going on, we were delisted from the FTSE, so we had less environmental reporting to be done at the time. But then we were relisted as part of 888 buying us as a group. And that was when we first had a net zero target, which was 2035. And as I said there, but there was no plan. So that was interesting. So moving forward to today, we've now got a carbon accounting platform because we couldn't measure scope 3 emissions. So that was, we sourced that last year. You can see our table there of our reduction, our emissions. So most of our emissions, probably like most companies, are scope 3. And our plan is to reduce these down by 90% by 2035, and then the last remaining 10% emissions to offset. And then last year we did our first TCFD report, so that will be now done annually. So that was probably pretty much at the start for us. I wrote our carbon transition plan about 2 months ago. So I've just plucked this graph straight out of that. So effectively, we need to reduce our emissions down by roughly 11% year on year. So it's quite an aggressive plan. Most of what we're going to do on here will be scope 3 related now, because we've reduced, if you're looking at market-based emission reduction, we've reduced our scope 1 and 2 by 90% already. Looking at the implementation, so as I mentioned, 97% of our emissions are on scope 3, and 80% of those are purchased goods and services. Maybe similar to other companies as well. One of the areas that will help us going forward next year is I'm going to put part of our bonus plan will be related to scope 3. So we'll have a percentage of the company's bonus plan related to scope 3 emissions. Why this is important for us, we've had some challenges in the past in terms of when we're sourcing suppliers, some that have lower emissions, a good net zero plan, probably a net zero target that relates to us, but some just don't have one at all. And what we don't want to be in is a fight with our stakeholders to choose the right supplier. We want to still be aligned on the same journey. So that will help us. This year we've got a scope 1 and 2 bonus plan, and I can assure you that really, really helps. So that will be a big advice to me for any companies that are going on this journey. Continuing on our implementation, so we have monthly decarbonisation meetings. These are led by procurement, and there's a cross-functional team with facilities management, estates, property, technology. That we talk about all about carbon reduction activities, so it goes into quite a granular detail. We're implementing our last remaining AMRs. I did mention we started on this journey years ago, but some of our shops, the Windmill Mill shops, have got meters that are either behind walls, behind shop facades, really, really difficult to get to, or really expensive. So there's a few straggler sites, so we've not quite got there yet. We've shifted to OPEX funding models now on energy efficiency. CapEx models now don't work for us. The paybacks are too long. We've kind of plucked down the low-hanging fruit. So that's a big area or a shift of focus for us. And then we implemented last year some AI software in our shops linked to our AMR, and they've actually reduced our emissions by about 10% absolute from year on year. So that's really good. And I've got a gentleman in the crowd, Mr. Matt Druitt. He'll probably kill me for mentioning his name. That's been pivotal to driving that through. So that's been big, and we'll continue to do that going forward. Carrying on with the implementation, so we're moving away from some of the electricity. We've launched more electric vehicles into our company car fleet, so that's grown from 0% to 28% and will grow further. We have launched the balance policy, so it's not me or procurement, this is from our HR department, but we've moved to 1 day working in the office a week. Now, that's important because our second largest emission, believe it or not, is employee commuting after purchased goods and services. So that's a big area for us, and that will help reduce our emissions. We're rolling out currently water urinals that will save a lot of water in the group. And we're moving from estimated emissions to actual emissions, and I'll go into a little bit of that detail shortly. So moving forward, you can see on this slide here, this is probably what most big companies have to deal with. All of the reporting requirements from the TCFD. We've just done our climate transition plan. TCFD will be updated annually. The transition plan, probably every 5 years, to be honest. We're just now working on our double materiality assessment, which is new for us and new for most companies. So for me, I find this probably the biggest challenge in my job is balancing out this reporting from actually doing the decarbonisation. And still, we're just a procurement, we're a procurement department. So our core focus isn't this. It's about sourcing, driving costs out in the business. So we just try to balance it all together. So that's just a challenge going forward. And probably because I don't really like the whole reporting bit as well, but I won't go into that either. So moving forward, I've got a picture of Eric Cantona, who's one of our ambassadors. I'd like to say he helps us with the carbon. He doesn't, but I thought one of my colleagues said you might as well put some pictures in the presentation, make it look a little bit more interesting. So anyway, supplier emissions data and carbon reduction plans are critical for us. It's a challenge with us and suppliers that either have a 2050 target or they don't have a target because it's just completely not in alignment. But we do have a plan how we're going to tackle those. 2024 is probably us starting the collaboration journey. So we're working with I'm getting some good learnings from some of our tier one suppliers, how they're doing it, much bigger than us, like the Googles of this world, Microsofts. And it's interesting to really understand how they're doing it, but we're also sharing with our smaller suppliers as well, and that will continue onwards. And one of the bigger things that we're doing is embedding net zero into all of our sourcing RFPs, sourcing decisions, and educating our stakeholders as well. So I'm going to move on to my last slide, and then I'll give you some, well, probably whether you want to hear it or you won't, you're going to hear it, some betting behaviour anyway in terms of our Euro 24 competition. So I've put here, enough is never enough. So look, we're relentless in our team in terms of driving carbon out of the business. The whole net zero agenda is now on our CEO's agenda. He wants to have weekly and monthly updates. So it's labelled as a strategic initiative, and we've published in our annual report. We've got 6 strategic initiatives. Carbon is one. So we have regular updates on that. We pump out a procurement monthly dashboard, and carbon's included in that. That goes to the whole of the company. We're going to be recalibrating our carbon setting metrics. So although I mentioned earlier on we've got 11% is our target annually, if we can go faster than that, we will do. We need to see our actual data as we get it on an annual basis, and we're moving from estimated data to actual. So that's going to change, we think, pretty significantly as we go forward. We are gaining SBTi accreditation. Look, that's not really going to help us internally, but it's more for external validation. Will help with our shareholders as well and investors. And as I mentioned, probably the big thing for us, embedding carbon into all of our sourcing decisions going forward, that'll be the game changer. And because we own that in procurement, we can really drive it through. So it's a good home for us to do that. So that comes to the end of the net zero part of the presentation.